It's absolutely ridiculous, but artists being what they are in a unique position to change it as well, because, and this actually dials back to the gallery and how you're able to negotiate. They're just people. It's just a business. They one day said, I think I can do it. I think I can put together a gallery. I think that I have the eye. I think I have the know-how. I'm going to do this business. And then they write down an idea of what their plan should be. There's no law that says an art gallery has to charge 50%. There are galleries in New York that charge 90% commission. So this commission is a malleable thing. So is who you include. And you know what? If they don't include you, make your own. That's the coolest thing about art too, is that we're creative enough to go, you don't want us? We're going to find another way. It might be on your driveway, but we're going to show up.
Welcome to Season 5 of the Drawing from Experience podcast.
Your source of relatable advice for the everyday artist.
We want you to pick up your pencils, pick up your paintbrush,
pick up your instrument, or whatever it is that you create with. Because let's face it,
this world is so much better with your art in it.
Whether you're an artist looking for more inspiration,
or an art enthusiast that loves to hear about the creative process,
you've come to the right place.
My name is Shane Izykowski.
And I'm Stefania Medeiros.
And this is the Drawing from Experience podcast.
Hey everyone, this is Stefania Medeiros.
And I'm Shane Izykowski.
And you are listening to the Drawing from Experience podcast. This is episode 131. And we just wrapped up our interview with Kyra Wilson. I am so excited about this interview. I think that this is not only a fantastic conversation that we just had, but it's also a great follow-up to our episode that we just previously put out, which is our confidence episode. I think that there are so many different topics that we cover, but most importantly too, Kyra is very business oriented. And I think that as artists, sometimes we get so wrapped up in the creation process, and we all, I think most of us can agree that creating is the most exciting part. So sometimes we put business on the back burner. Kyra's conversation it covers a lot of bases. And I think that one of the more quotable moments too, moving into it, is meet yourself where you're at. And that's why I'm saying this is a great follow-up to the confidence episode, because we cover a lot of topics that go over, being realistic with yourself and where you stand as far as what your goals are and how you would like to approach that.
Yeah. There's so many moments that are like mic drop moments that she has that I feel like people will take some inspiration, or whatever that driving force is that she has behind how she speaks about the art world and her business and everything, that I really feel like people can take a lot from. And I introduced her as a badass on this episode because she is, and she proves it time and time again throughout the interview. So so I'm super thankful to have this time with her. And if you don't know Kyra's work, go look it up, find her on all the social medias. And something exciting that she's starting to offer soon is a mentorship program through her Patreon. So for people that want business advice, I think that I don't know how much it is to join the mentorship tier with her, but I can guarantee that it would be worth it for any artist who wants to learn more about the business side of things. So
I agree. And even after having this conversation with her, I want to join her mentorship program, because not only like what she was talking about refreshing, but it really just shows like how well she knows this world and how much people who aren't in the business world as much when it comes to art can benefit from this.
Yeah, for sure.
So without further ado, here is Kyra Wilson.
On today's episode of the Drawing from Experience podcast, we have a very special guest, Kyra Wilson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Kyra is an extremely talented artist that I've been aware of for a while now, for a couple of years, mainly through some mutual friends. She is one of the founding members of the Strange Dreams Art Collective, and a full-time artist and an overall badass, I would say. So, so thank you so much for joining us. We really want to begin kind of like knowing more about your art practice and everything. And we know you have a business degree, which I would say in the art world is a rare thing. A lot of artists that I know do not have a business degree. And so that's something we really want to dive into. But yeah, let's just, I would love to know more about your early years in the art world and when you started painting and things like that.
Okay. Well, I come from a traditional type family. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a programmer. So the arts was kind of like, cool. What are you going to do to support yourself?
Your hobby. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, it was a hobby. My grandfather was very artistic, but he was so insecure about himself and self-doubt and all sorts of things. And he had people, he did so much art stuff. He was actually a teacher in the shop, I think, like metal shop and everything. And he did these amazing sculptures out of rebar and all sorts of stuff. My father remembers people driving up to the house and offering to buy some of his sculptures, and he couldn't do that. He couldn't let them go. And he
Oh,
was
wow.
in the era where he would have just been huge. He was, towards La Jolla, California. It was the right era. He would have blown up, and his own insecurities held him back. And that's something that's stuck
Oh
with
boy.
me because
Wow. Okay.
I don't want to go out of this world thinking, boy, I wish I hadn't been so insecure that I got in my own way.
I'm so glad you're talking about that. We just released
Yeah,
an
sounds
episode
familiar.
on confidence as an artist and everything. So yeah, so that speaks to us right now for sure.
Well, I mean, it's really hard because no matter what you create, you're creating something personal and then you're selling it. And so your I don't want to say self-worth, but there is a value to yourself that you've put into the work, and you're trying to get somebody to buy it. And what are they going to buy it for? Which makes pricing hard. And maybe they don't want me at all. Maybe I shouldn't talk to these people. I can't talk to them, that kind of thing. I'm not good enough. But it's a horrible thing to say, but if my grandfather hadn't been such an insecure person when it came to his own creativity, I don't know if I would have pushed through. And even then, I still struggled incredibly because I have loved art from the beginning. My mother would say if I was having a typical child temper tantrum kind of day, she would just sit me in the corner, give me some paper and crayons, and leave me alone. And then I was happy. And I got into it in high school, and I wasn't sure exactly. I didn't totally get the whole art track for college kind of stuff. I was going to do this thing they had this school in France. I don't remember what it is anymore, but I graduated in 93. So it was a long time ago. And I was I'm going to go after that. And my mother, they can turn down, at least at that point, if you were under 22, you were still considered a minor by international standards or whatever. And my mother vetoed it, even though it looked like I was going somewhere with it. And at that point, I had missed the deadline for everything else and I didn't know what to do. So I stopped. And then I worked, and then I was like, I got to go to school. I got to do something. And so I went to community college and I took everything because I took some art classes too, because if I'm going to be there, I don't want to be miserable. so I took some art classes too. And I ended up meeting my husband and getting engaged when we moved to Chicago. And I thought, well, this is cool. I'm in Chicago. I'm close to the Art Institute and everything. So I ended up waiting until I had residency. And then I went to and finished community college in Chicago, where I got my associates of fine art. It was okay. I did it for two reasons in a community college. One, it was more affordable than trying to go to an art school. You can transfer in the associate's degree for way less money.
Yeah.
And the teachers, a lot of them worked with or at or did stuff with the Chicago Institute of Art. So why on earth would I pay $20,000 when $600 will get me the same experience?
Right.
So, although there was some weirdness with there too, but I graduated with that. I was going to go to Barra, which I don't think exists anymore, but it was in Lake Forest, Illinois. But we ended up moving back to Colorado, and that was a good thing. And so my education stopped, started a family. And in the meantime, I was sort of doing art on the side, but not professionally. We eventually ended up in Vermont. We moved 7 times in 5 years. So it was very disruptive and very hard to do anything but draw. I just drew in my sketchbooks, and that's it. No paint, nothing, because I had babies and it was impossible.
Yeah.
But I had my sketchbook. They're crawling on the floor. I was like, okay, cool. I got a minute, Then when I think my son was not quite a year old, we were down in Rutland, Vermont, walking around, and there was an art gallery. And I had kind of circled around some of this stuff anyway. And I popped my head in and I said, I looked around and I thought, well, okay, some of the paintings I had started painting at that point. Once everybody was asleep, I'd stay up late painting, which is not smart when you don't sleep anyway because your kids are little. But I asked the gallery owner, I thought, well, I was looking at the stuff and I'm like, okay, my stuff would, I think I'm good enough, at least compared to some of them. So I asked the person who turned out to be the gallery owner, what do I need to do to be here? And after talking and showing some pictures and stuff that I had, which was, back then pre-digital paper, she said, I'll give you a whole wall. And so
Wow.
I was like, really? And so that was my first experience with a gallery. Is the gallery owner said, absolutely, I want to represent you. I'm going to give you this wall.
That's amazing.
And it was a
that's
really
a
big learning
boost.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is. And I've also walked in, I was lucky because I also talked to another gallery owner in Woodstock, Vermont, which is a pretty snooty place. And I just was looking around. I really liked the work as well. And I just wanted to ask what their submission guidelines were. How did they submit there? And the man screamed at me in the middle of this gallery. I was mortified because there were other people around and just screamed at me. And you never approach a gallery. You never talk to them. You don't talk to them. They talk to you, and just basically screamed me out of the gallery.
That's horrible.
So if that had been my one experience, that would have been it. I would have been like, yeah, okay, I don't care anymore.
Well, similar kind of experiences with other artists, that is it. Like sometimes they have that experience and they will never ask anybody ever again, so this story of you being like, well, you know what, I've had that experience, I'm going to try again in another gallery is really what I think people should take out of that, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, it's just the world's changed a lot, even though it's only been 20 years, but I know that point of view, that mindset about elitism and the galleries is still there, even though it really needs to evolve.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. And I've seen it. I've definitely seen that kind of behavior, maybe not to the extent of somebody screaming at somebody just for asking, but these are the internal fears that a lot of artists have. This is like people who maybe aren't very confident about showing their artwork to a gallery owner, how to approach a gallery owner. These are the fears. This is the literal fear of somebody is getting screamed at by a gallery owner, being shamed in front of a bunch of other people or something. So right. I think that's terrible that really actually does happen,
And as somebody too, like in my experience, I haven't approached a gallery yet. I've never been approached by a gallery. I don't have that experience yet. So I want to ask you guys too, like we've heard from Kyra both sides of this, where you can walk into a gallery and easily be given an entire wall to showcase your work. Or on the flip side, you can walk into a gallery and blink at them the wrong way. And, they'll basically tell you to leave. What is the standard approach for somebody who hasn't had a gallery experience before? Is there a proper way to go about that?
Yeah. What is your way nowadays, Kyra?
Well, galleries are sort of we've talked about this, how I find galleries to be sort of
let's do it. I'm ready.
I find galleries to be kind of a tricky situation because the industry has really evolved. Back when I first started asking, the internet was You've Got Mail and Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. It was AOL, and there was no photos. You weren't selling, or if you're doing photos, you had to splice them into your own little page. You had to know how to HTML program, which I did. But the galleries were all paper. They accepted actual I remember, I still have some. You had to buy a nice portfolio to put your photos in. They had to be quality photos, and you were never getting it back. So you were spending this money to even talk to them. But you still had to be able to ask them, how does somebody talk? How do we submit to you? It isn't like now you can go on the line, and a lot of the galleries will say, we're not accepting artists right now, but if you're interested, you can send us an email, or we have open call until November or whatever. Do your research. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to waste the time. Well, we're all time spent as far as, artists go. We need 12 of us at least minimum. But research the gallery and see if you can figure out what their policies are. see if you know anybody who does show art there, because they might know. And then last resort, and I know it sounds horrible, but last resort, reach out to the gallery and say, and don't just send your work, send an email saying, I'd like to potentially submit to you. How would be the best way to do that for you? And be respectful, because it's their time too. And
Right.
if they're getting emails with images and things attached in this day and age, that's also can be sort of a threatening thing to the computer system, that kind of thing. And they don't know what they're opening. They don't want to, they're definitely not going to click on a link. So, but some of them do require, hey, put yours in a cloud drive, invite me to it, and I'll look at it that way. You know, what are their policies? And that's the best thing you can do professionally to reach out to an artist's organization, whether it's a gallery or a co-op or whatever, is show them the respect up front that you know that their time is valuable, like to talk to you. What's the best way for you to receive my communications?
Right.
So,
yeah. Thank you.
and
for
they
that
may
answer.
still be nasty. They might still be nasty, but that's when
Yeah.
you have to go, okay.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I like the point too that you made about, you know, reaching out and being accommodating to them right off the bat, because I think sometimes we forget that when we're reaching out to people, we're not just trying to establish a one-sided gain. You know, we have to acknowledge too that we want to show that we want to be accommodating, and you know, we want to work with somebody, not, you know, just approach them and just ask
Yeah.
for what you want.
Developing a relationship with them ultimately.
Yeah.
You know, I
But you
think
have
it's
to, like
cool.
with anybody, you want to make sure that there's somebody you want to have a relationship with.
Yes, totally.
So
I think it's an interesting point you brought up about back in pre-internet as it stands today.
Yeah.
Something I haven't really considered so much is the idea that like having that real portfolio back then definitely means they did not receive as many submissions as they receive nowadays. Right?
I don't know, because I remember walking into some galleries and they had those portfolios stacked to the ceiling,
Really?
dumpsters full of them. Yeah, sometimes you could get them
Wow.
back
Dumpsters.
if you were smart. Yeah, no, seriously, because they had to do something with them, and recycling wasn't a big thing yet. So
Wow.
they, some people were smart, and they would include a folded envelope and postage on it, and with a note saying, "Please return this to me." And then they would most of the time get them back. But some galleries were like, "Yeah, screw you,"
Yeah.
So that was the only way to do it. So yeah, there were stacks and stacks.
So we had this conversation about the 50% thing with galleries.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, Kyra. Oh my God. Okay. You kind of blew my mind when we were chatting about this, because I had never really considered the idea of renegotiating that 50%. And there are definitely plenty of times that I should have done that, because I'm just like, I basically agreed to doing a show with them. They take their 50%. I maybe didn't really look into their social media as much. I agreed to doing it. I brought my own collector. I maybe even pre-sold the work to the show to that collector. They didn't repost my piece during the show even on their social media for free. And they collected their 50% for me doing all the work, literally the actual piece of artwork, all the marketing, bringing the collector, advertising for the show. And they did not do anything except hang it on their wall. That's it. So so I'd love for you to talk about that and renegotiating the contract with the gallery itself.
So this dovetails into everything we do. So even if you don't work with galleries, this applies to you, period. You have to price your piece, no matter how you sell it, as if it was selling on a gallery wall for 50% commission. And the reason is because that 50% commission is a payment for services rendered. And they have to bring that to the table. They need to bring people you've never heard of, who have never heard of you. They have to bring marketing and advertising. They have to bring the sales platform. You know, some of them will even say, oh, we'll just refer them back to you. You process the payment and give us our commission. That cuts in even further. You're giving more than 50% away, because you're losing the fee too to the payment processing. Whereas if they're processing the payment, they're going to lose the 2 to 4%, whatever their processor is. So you are paying them for their marketing, for their salespeople, for their display, for clients, for everything. If they aren't doing that, they are not worth your time, period. And if you're not selling it through a gallery, you're doing that. You've earned that part. So you pay yourself. It's not like, oh, well, it's not a gallery, so I can charge $200 for it instead of 400. No,
Right.
no, nope. It's worth that because it would be worth that somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand the hat that you're wearing. You're not just getting paid to be an artist. If, like in your case, Shane, you are a born salesman, you're really good at it. You are really good at talking and wheeling and dealing and communicating and tapping into what people are looking for and having that conversation. You know, you're really good at that. And that's probably why you brought your stuff to the show, and you already brought the buyers too. And really the gallery just went, cool. Don't have to do anything for him.
Yeah.
You know, so you're somebody who doesn't necessarily need a gallery, or you need a gallery that's going to step up in a big way. So, and we're not just artists. I mean, we're accountants, we're marketing, we're advertising, we're everything, and we deserve to be paid for all of it, even though that's a hard subject to touch on. And with that, if I'm going to do an entire show for a gallery, like, you know, you're doing your 10 to 20 pieces, 30 pieces, whatever. For one thing, I'm filling their whole gallery. So, or at least their whole show thing. So it's probably unlikely that I would even say, okay, to 50%. And even there would have to be some really strange circumstance that 50% would make sense, because I'm doing more work than, say, a group show. So I do on new galleries that I haven't worked with and I'm just doing a group show with, and I'm sending a piece in, I don't mind the commission that's set because I'm just sort of participating on the side, and other artists are doing it with me, other name recognition, other people are bringing clients in. It's okay to pool resources, you know, and the gallery is coordinating that. So if I have a wall in a gallery and I'm bringing clients in and I'm doing most of the marketing and everything, or, you know, they have a lot of different artists that are their clients, then it doesn't make sense that I'm paying them 50% of my work when I'm doing a lot of their work for them. So I very rarely pay 50% commission. More commonly, I pay 30. It's been as low as 10. It's been as high as, I think I did one that was 55. But that was a special snooty thing that wasn't even worth it. And remember that these galleries are businesses, and so are you. You're a person that's got a lot of personal feelings tied up, and you have to be really careful because that makes you vulnerable to manipulation. Whereas they're a business and they have a bottom line, and they're thinking about product and what it costs to sell it and the commission that they'll bring in. And if it's I'm not saying that gallery owners are unscrupulous. They're not. It's just, this is a weird product situation. This is not, I'm selling you ice cream cones, you know, and they're all the same and I can knock them out however many, and it's not like that. And so the suppliers, even though they can be like herding cats working with artists sometimes, they're still vulnerable and can be perhaps swayed to a position that doesn't necessarily benefit the artist so much as it benefits the gallery owner.
Right.
And so you really have to, this is a business. This is a business. This is a business. I can't say that enough. It's, you know, it's not drinking coffee under the Eiffel Tower and painting and living the life. I'm sure that was someone, I don't know. But this is a business. And as much as you're personally attached to your art, you have to be analytically cold-hearted on the side of the business part.
Yeah.
You know, you can't say, I feel bad about myself. I'll lower my prices, and if I sell this one piece, I'll feel better about myself. That can't be how you find your validation, because you don't see pizza owners doing that. You know, the pizzerias, I feel bad, I'm going to sell my pizzas for $2 instead of 10, you know, it's like, nope, that's not how it works. Supply, demand, product, cost, you know, you have to know, you have to do that. You know, you talked about how me having a business degree is an unusual thing in the art community. And if there's one thing about an art degree that I would say to somebody is, boy, get business classes in it. Every elective, if you're doing an art degree and that's the way you've gone, every elective should be a business one. Yeah. Every single one.
Well,
because they don't teach it.
Yeah. So backing up a little bit about your education, is you have a business degree, and you gave me kind of like this anecdote about a paper that you wrote about
Oh
the
my
art world.
Yeah, my
This is
business
great
plan
because,
thing.
and you basically like explained to your professor, like, hey, I wrote this business plan for an art business, and I realized that the art world works backwards in
Backwards.
comparison to the rest of the business world. First of
Yep.
all, what the hell, like what this,
Yeah.
why is this way? And like, yeah, if you can explain that a little bit for us, that'd be great.
Yeah. So let me back up a little bit too and say
Sure.
how I ended up in business school.
Okay.
I ended up in business school because I kept trying to be normal. And so yeah,
Normal.
I went back. Yeah.
What is that?
It's programming, being an engineer, I don't know,
Right.
So I decided to go back to school because I really just wanted to be normal. I wanted to have a normal job and feel like I've earned a reasonable paycheck, and all the normal stuff people do. People go to work, they hit the grocery store on the way home, they make dinner, do laundry. I don't know. It's normal. And they don't stay up till 4 a.m. painting a sloth like I did the other night, And so I went back to school. So I graduated in 2008. So my kids were elementary age. So once they hit elementary, I went back to school, and I graduated top of my class. Probably not the tippy top, but really high. Did well, but it was really hard. I went to school full time. It took an hour to drive there one way. And then afterwards, I went and got a job as like a business analyst type position, pretty basic. And I hated it. I had an office with no windows, and my door had one of those windows like in high schools. And that's all, really high ceilings, flickering fluorescent lights, like right out of Joe versus the Volcano. It was horrible. And then I only worked there for like 6 months, and they had layoffs towards Christmas. And I was like, I volunteer as tribute. I'm like, here, me. And they said, oh, well, we weren't going to eliminate your position. I'm like, yes, but here's how you can absorb my position, because it doesn't need to be done by me. It can be done like this. And I'm like, you can let me go. And they were like, oh, okay. Bye. So, and they were a good company. It killed my soul. So, and that was it. That was that wasn't the total last time I worked a normal job, but I've worked as a paralegal, an HR person, a business analyst, a personal trainer. I've done a lot of different jobs, but I'm not going to, even though every once in a while my brain veers that way, I'm not going to do that anymore, because this is my job, and that's okay. And finding my balance in it is important. That business degree wasn't intended to be for art, but when we had to write this big paper, they were like, write it about a business that you might know something about. And I'm like, well, I know about my art. And, and it was kind of an interesting discussion about luxury products anyway, because they classify art as a luxury product, but it doesn't actually really totally fit as a luxury product. It's different. It's its own animal. It's its own thing.
I'd love to hear about that too, but we can get back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's part of that. I think actually it probably dovetails into it. A luxury product is something that people buy when they can. So you've got your hierarchy of needs, people have food and shelter and stuff like that. People don't start buying the frivolous stuff until they're safe and they can move up financially, through that. Art defies that, but we'll come back to that. But really expensive perfume, that's right at the top, right? So my marketing teacher, he had this story about this perfume that was, this company came up, I can't remember the name of it. You can actually, somebody can probably Google it and look it up, but there was this expensive perfume, and they were like, or it wasn't expensive at the time. They came up with this great perfume, and they're like, we're going to do something they haven't seen before. We're going to give this, we're going to mass market it, put it at an affordable price, so whoever can buy it and feel really good about it. It's a really great product. And they put it out and bombed. It just totally bombed. So they pulled it off the market. They rebranded it, didn't change the actual product itself, just like shot the price up into the stratosphere and made limited quantities, and they sold out. And that's a luxury product, and that's luxury marketing. It's, it's about scarcity and somebody being able to show off that they've got it. Art does play into that a little bit. That's a luxury product. And that's why art is sometimes categorized as it, but you will not find somebody who is trying to save up for their first house go out and blow $1,000 on a bottle of perfume, and not unless they need to go get help for other reasons. You know, they're you don't do that.
Yeah.
But you will find somebody who's saving up for that house who sees something and it just speaks to them on a whole other level. And they'll go, I can wait an extra couple of months. I need to have this as part of my life. And that's where art defies everything. It becomes a need and a want, and there's not much else that comes into that category that I can think of, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's you're dealing with a very unique product that's an investment from you, but is also an investment from the buyer.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole different game, and it's complicated, but really the trick is just to remember your worth in the middle of it. and then back to being cold and businessy. So
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that formula, I talk to a lot of people about pricing their art, and there's a lot of artists that are like, I feel really bad asking for like this price or whatever. I'm like, Stefani raises her hand. And so what I usually tell people is like, what I found in my experience and watching the behavior of somebody who finds that piece, who's like, this is the piece that speaks to me. If they have that money, or if they really think that they can, if they somehow can afford that, it almost doesn't matter how much the piece of artwork is. Like, I've literally seen them try to figure it out, and they're like, I don't know how I'm going to actually make this work, but there's no way I'm letting this go, because
Yep.
they know what it feels like to have seen something that they really, really wanted, and they still think about that like 10 years later. I have those things. I have those moments where I'm just like, I can't believe I missed out on that, and then also like, in relation to the art world, these artists like 10 years later have now progressed their career to a different point. Their artwork is $5,000 more per piece. And you're like, I can't believe I missed out on that piece of artwork I could have gotten for $1,000. And now it's $10,000 or something,
yeah.
So, and I hate to even say it like this, but I always think to myself, I'm like, well, if somebody wants an original of mine, right now is the best time to get it, because it is literally the least expensive it is ever going to be.
Oh, that's such a great point. And that's
I'm
such a
not
good
going down, so it's only going to be increased, and that's
a
not
really
like a
great
sales
point, too.
tactic. It's literally like, I really feel that way. So
No,
Yeah.
that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah.
Because there's truth in it too. And it is a good marketing tactic, even if it's not intentionally, if you're not intentionally saying it that way, it's true.
Yeah.
It adds to that scarcity element.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, go ahead.
So Kyra, so you kind of answered the question I had about, you've mentioned that you've always had art in your life, and especially with your grandfather playing a role in all of that. And I was curious how you ended up in the business world, but you answered that question.
Yeah.
So now that you've kind of come full circle and you've revisited art and, made it known to yourself that this is a business, you can do this for a career. Are you happy that you did go to business school? I would assume yes.
Yeah. Oh,
But,
yeah.
I mean, more often than not, most artists, the part that they're most excited about is creating the art, and business is always put on the back burner. So that being said, I would assume and think that like most artists really aren't thinking about business at the forefront. So with the knowledge that you have now, I mean, in hindsight, what would you say is like, are some of the most valuable things that you've learned or that have allowed you to kind of develop the knowledge that you have when it comes to business and art?
So I had an art intern last year, and from the local high school, and COVID meant we had to do everything online and Zoom calls and things like that. So one of the things that we talked about is she was going to go to art school, and I think that that's great. There's a lot of benefit to going to the art school, especially if you're planning on moving in certain circles. So there's still a lot of snooty elitism. What school did you go to? What did you graduate? You're an insider, outsider artist, and all that. A million ways to try and label and exclude. And the one environment that is totally inclusive. It's all these people trying to find a way to exclude people, which is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Because there's room for everybody in art, every skill level, everybody, everything. And if I were to be a teenager now, and knowing that I want to do art, if I had the money to go to college, which is insane right now, and I can speak to that because my children are in college. So I would get a business degree, not an art degree, because there are so many resources for art mentorship or just individual learning and techniques, and anything you want to learn is out there, or enough of something is that you can develop on your own. And there's peer groups that you can work to get better. Nobody gets better in a vacuum. That's true. I mean, you hit a certain point and then you're going to top out. You need feedback, which is hard for artists, but there are so many resources out there that I don't honestly necessarily think that everybody needs art school. They don't. I'll probably get crucified for that, and this will probably end some relationships that were potential with other guys.
This is a common topic.
We have this conversation a lot with artists, how they feel about the $100,000 in debt they are, and if they feel like it was worth it. And so
it's my opinion on colleges are of a whole other level anyway. We're a for-profit educational system that creates a situation where 2 years of college really takes 4 now, and it shouldn't. You're taking, even though they're talking about well-rounded individuals, I get that, but there's trades, and you learn your trade, and then you can still become a well-rounded individual without mortgaging your house or never ever getting a house because you owe as much as a mortgage.
Yeah.
But if I had the money and I'm a teenager, I'm going to business school and I'm taking art electives and I'm doing all my online stuff, paying for a couple courses online, which is way cheaper than a college class, that kind of thing. And that's how I approach it. Business is boring. So it is. It's exciting to some people, but when you're an artist, it's not exciting. It's it's cool getting paid. That part's cool. Although it still gives me anxiety. It gives me complete anxiety. Somebody buys one of my pieces and I'm like, oh my God, what if they hate it? What if I'm shipping it and they get it and they go, oh my God, I want to return it. Right. And that's, I have a huge amount of insecurity around my art too. I totally do. Okay. Let's face it, with all the resources out there, there's also all these images of how much better other art is, or maybe other art that appeals to you more, even though you don't make that kind of art. And you're like, okay, well, they're great and I'm not. And so there's a huge amount of insecurity. And so when I send my paintings out, I'm always like biting my nails until they get it. And then they get it and they're happy. And I'm like, okay, yay. But I feel like I can't breathe until they do.
Right.
And, even the ones that have been supporters for like 10 years and still buying work, I'm still nervous every time I send something out. So art is anxiety ridden, but it's exciting. Even though that's a very scary thing. I mean, I think artists are adrenaline junkies. I mean, the ones who go into business with it or are working on showing their work and selling it, because we're like this. We're like, oh, look, I finished this. Oh, nobody's liked it. Nobody's interested in buying it. Oh, what if I priced it wrong? This and that. Or when you start a new piece, it's like, well, I've forgotten how to paint. I guess I'll just start. And if it's crap, I will not show anybody, and then you get through it and you hit these points where you walk away and the paintings, become its own person and you hate them. And, we're like this, and that's art. And so we're adrenaline junkies, and we're like closeted adrenaline junkies. And then there's business, which is like, I have to do it in the morning or I would fall asleep.
Yeah.
So, I can stay up all night, but not if I'm doing accounting.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, you've mentioned like the part about being in the morning. That was probably just an example, but I did also want to pick your brain about how you spend and separate your time when it comes to working on art and business, and how you may dedicate certain time or days, or how you can separate the two. And because I know, like with me, my brain, if I'm in a creative mindset, there's no way I can work on anything business related, and vice versa. So how do you go about that with your structure and your schedule?
So one of the things I've noticed about myself personally, I don't know if it's unique to me or not, is that I almost have, I don't know if it's a mental block or not, but I've noticed it since I was young. I cannot create early in the day. I physically cannot. If I force myself, it comes out like garbage. There's something. Now I'm a natural night owl, so that might play into it. My brain is just not working that way. But I can do complex math in the morning. Like for real. I when I was in college, that's when I took statistics and accounting and everything else. I put that all into the morning and I did well. But if I had taken an evening class, I would have failed it. But around 1 to 2 in the afternoon, my brain turns over, and then it's, oh, I can paint. I've got this. I can do that up until like 3 in the morning. I can do that. So
why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Because I'm the same way. I'm totally
really
the same way. For
That's
sure.
Good. That's good because nobody else says they are.
Oh, really? I think
Yes.
the whole like being a night owl naturally, yeah, I have the best, most creative ideas at night. I can get in my flow state quicker with painting at night, and like I don't know. I'm not sure if there's this cosmic aspect to it with the moon and
I mean, I love the moon, so
yeah, me too.
Maybe.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I don't know. I've always been a night person anyway. Even, I mean, my family, all 4 of them, not my family, but growing up, all genetic night owls. And, I remember vacuuming, cleaning my room at 3 in the morning, So there is something about where your brain naturally picks up. And I think it's important because this is not something where you've been paid to put together. We'll go back to pizza because apparently I'm hungry. You go and you're paid to put together a pizza. You can do that at 6 a.m. You can do that at 10 o'clock at night, but there is something where, this is where I sound hokey. I think that you're just spiritually involved in your pieces. Your art is you. And if you're not ready to literally pour out your heart and soul into something, even if it's silly and stupid and small, and maybe you're just sketching a cat, I don't know, it's just whatever. And I mean that with no disrespect because I paint a lot of cats.
I was going to say, don't disrespect the cats. No, I'm just joking. Your cat in the background, I literally have watched it. What is this cat's name? Odin?
Odin, yeah.
He was like preparing his spot for a good like minute before he laid down. It was really amazing. Sorry. I also draw a lot of cats as well. So
yeah. So no disrespect to the cats, but it's not like you're making the next well, you never know, but the next Mona Lisa or something. You're not putting whatever, but you are putting yourself into it. And when I paint something and it's got, all my paintings have subjects in it, like animals or people or whatever. And except for the abstract ones, I always paint the eyes first because I have to connect with the piece. If I don't connect with it, it feels wrong. It feels like trying to talk to somebody whose back is turned to you.
Right.
And so I don't connect when I make a pizza. I'm not connecting with the pizza. That's a different functionality of who we are. You can just do stuff or you can do stuff. And so I think that my brain has to be on a level with being open to connect with my creativity, my skill set, and that's why outside influences, when your life sort of lights on fire, can prevent you from being creative. Everybody's like, oh, it's horrible angst stuff going on in your life. You should make stuff for that. You should paint it out. And it's like, you know what? I got other ideas for this paintbrush, and it doesn't involve making something really good if you're talking. So just saying.
Creative Conquest.
Shane Simmons says, finally getting to tattoo myself again. Had a no-show at the shop, so I got to give myself a new piece. Man, I wish I was a tattoo artist so I could do that. That's so cool, Shane. Thank you for sharing with the community here. Foxy Lou says, produced, emceed, and performed in my largest production of a cabaret. You know that I know that you're a badass, Foxy Lou, and congratulations on your largest production. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing with us. Alyssa Harrison says, upcoming publication of Women in Charge column I started is in editing phase. Excited. In a week or so, it should go to print. I'm grateful. Working on the next issue's interview questions and booking photo shoot of the interviewee once the interview is done. Have a few backup options as well, just in case. Reconnected with a doll club in their in-person get-together today. So glad to be back and have missed my friends. I wrap up with the interviews, magazine column, prospecting for partnerships, EOY for the local mom group. I cannot wait to reconnect with pursuing art and autonomous design projects. Started updating my professional profiles in bite-sized increments daily, LinkedIn, and my portfolio as of last week. Alyssa, congratulations. That is a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm not even sure what all of those things are. A doll club. I'm curious. What does a doll club do exactly? But regardless, it all sounds very exciting, and congrats on getting all of that stuff done. If you guys are interested in sharing with us and connecting with the Drawing from Experience creative community, you can find us on Facebook and start sharing with us today. And now back to the show. I connect so much to a lot of what you just said. First and foremost, this painting that you see right here in my background, I was just on a Instagram live or something, and I was explaining my process, and I'm doing a lot of foliage in the background of it. But my subject here, she's a lot more shaded with shadows and highlights and things. I have to do that part of it. I have to feel like it's starting to look like a painting with that before I can do the rest of it. So when I got to her, I needed to actually render some of that as early as I could, because I need to feel good about it early, or else the rest of it is going to feel like it's like the ditch digging part of it. It's going to feel like really hard to get through it, but if I feel good about this one part of it, like you're saying, like connecting to it, I'm going to feel a lot better about it.
But as far as like balancing business and creativity, I think you have to figure out when your brain turns on for different things. And for me with art, I mean, like what you're saying about the painting behind you, it's almost like you could walk up to her, hold your hand out to her, and she could take your hand and say, we're a partnership. And I know that sounds hokey, I get it, but it's stuff I think on the inside.
Yeah.
I don't share this at parties or anything, but there's a partnership. It's almost, I mean, I've had paintings go completely differently than I even planned them, because it's like the painting just pulled me in that direction. Almost like I wasn't part of the plan on that one, and that's the way it was going to go.
I agree with what you're saying about connecting to the piece. I think that's what makes the experience so endearing, and it allows you to keep wanting to work on it. So I think that's a really important part. And also too, I've heard that we as people individually, our brains are made to work at a higher function at certain parts of the day. And I feel like everyone just needs to figure out what part of the day is their time to either choose to do the productive things or to be creative. Because I think that figuring that out about yourself is going to help make your day a lot easier as well.
I also think it's about being kind to yourself.
Yes.
If you're trying to, if somebody said, I have to be an accountant, and, that would be a very unkind thing to do to me. And I have a lot of friends who are accountants, but for me, that is not something that my brain can do all the time. And if they said, if I had to try and balance my books at midnight, that would be horrible. And it would honestly be, in my opinion, abusive to myself. So if you're trying to make yourself do a painting at a time when you know that you can't work efficiently, well, you don't feel good, whatever, it's actually not respecting yourself. If you're running this business, back to business, you're an employee, you wouldn't do this to somebody like that, even with a deadline. I mean, how many times have you, and everybody's been in school, where they've been in high school or whatever, and they were studying for a test, and they just, they thought, oh, I'll pull an all-nighter, which is one of the worst things you can do. But you can take an hour to learn this chapter in the evening, or you can read it in 15 minutes next morning when you're well rested and your brain's awake, and retain twice as much from it and do better. So you have to, and that's not everybody, but you have to know who you are, be respectful and kind to who you are, and meet yourself where you're at. Like I exercise and I don't like it. Like I said, I got certified as a personal trainer, but I got certified as a personal trainer not because I wanted to train people. It was in my search for knowledge about my own situation. And so I know that exercise is important. I also know I hate it. So I work out in the morning when my brain is not awake, because I will talk myself out of it. If the rest of my brain wakes up, I will not do it. So I meet myself where I'm at. I know that if I get up and that's the first thing I do, I will do it. And it's the best thing for me. And I know that if I try and paint at 8 a.m, it's not the best thing for me, but I can balance my books then. So I know of other artists, you were asking this question earlier. I know of other artists who set aside Mondays or Wednesdays or whatever, and they do no creating on that day. It's a creative off day, and it's balance the books, marketing outreach, set up post to post or whatever, talk to galleries, order supplies, whatever. And you're not going to paint all day because otherwise it hangs over your head. Oh, I got to get this done so I can go do. No, make the space for you to be the employee to yourself that you need to be. It will free up some time because you won't always be torturing yourself about everything. If you're painting, you're thinking about, wow, I need to go do this. If you're doing this, you're thinking I should be painting. So give yourself the respect of allowing yourself the knowledge that you're not more than one person, and give yourself the space to complete what you need to complete and be reasonable about it.
Yeah.
And so I can't really say, oh, you should do Mondays on that or something. I don't know, but you do. You might have to give it a thought, but
Yeah.
Those are really great points.
I think figuring that out about yourself, like you're saying, makes a lot of sense. And I want to piggyback off of that because I think part of the problem is that the societal conversation that's happening about taking care of yourself a certain way, it's almost like it kind of shames people inadvertently into being a certain structure, like having a certain structure in their life where they're like, if you want to be healthy, you need to wake up in the morning and do yoga. If you want to be this way, if you want to feel like your life is on the right track, you need to be this way. And it's not at the complete fault of those people who are doing that, but I think it doesn't point out all the time that everybody is different and everybody's rhythm is different. And the fact that we sometimes paint until 4 o'clock in the morning does not mean that we're going to wake up at 6 a.m. 2 hours later to do yoga. So, and also not being on a 9 to 5 schedule, having a day job and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that I should feel bad that I'm waking up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon after doing the 4 o'clock in the morning thing, So I think some of that conversation should leave room for interpretation depending on who you are. And once you figure those things out about yourself, for sure.
Well, remember that society loves to put labels and people in a box because it makes it easier for them to not have to invest the thought in what's around them. If I can label that person as this and this person is that, I don't have to actually get to know them. That's what they are. They fit under these labels, and that's how I'll deal with them. And society loves to try and push you in a box. Every single person, whether you're an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, work at the library, whatever, they're going to try and put you in a box, and they're going to tell you should. How many times a day do you say the word should to yourself? Because that's like every other freaking conversation in my head. And I'm aware of it. How many times do you hear the word should inside your head? Not even from other people, in your own head, because you're reacting to other things around you.
Yeah.
You saw the yoga post and you thought, oh, I guess I should do that, but I don't know how I could even do that. But the should was still there. And it's a judgment. The problem with all those judgments is that nobody's had a moment to sit down with you and say, tell me who you are. And here's the harsh truth. And this sounds really horrible. Nobody cares. They don't care. They're not going to sit down with you and have that conversation. They're not going to be your advocate. We write these wonderful books and movies and everything where it shows people advocating and truly investing in each other. And we do have some special friends in our lives that will do that. People aren't, but they're very few. If somebody says, oh, you have like 100 people. No, you don't. No, you don't. If you have one, you're lucky. If you have more than one, you're exceptionally lucky. In the end, even if you have none, you have yourself, and that's it. And it comes down to you, and you need to know who you are, and you need to have that conversation. Am I a yoga person? Yoga makes me rage. Honest to goodness, I have never been so angry in my life as when I do yoga. And I can't even explain why it is. But if I run, I chill out. So
Can
I'm
we
not a
title
yoga
this?
person.
Can we title this episode "Yoga Makes Me
Yoga
Rage" with Kyra Wilson?
But I mean, nobody cares that yoga literally makes me irrationally angry. Nobody cares, but I care. So
Yeah.
I'm going to advocate for not doing yoga for myself. I mean, I'll do it if I injure something. They tell me that's the only way and they pay me. But no, but I can't deny the benefits of it. I can't deny that the lifestyle that they package it in another box looks extremely attractive with the sunshine on the beach and the plants and all. I mean, that's cool, but it's a box. They're selling you a box. And the trick is to not buy into the box. We have a lot of boxes as artists too. And with our continual connection to our work, which involves ourself, and as a person who will always be evolving, that makes the boxes threatening and disheartening, and they can erode your self-esteem without you even realizing it, because you probably little things in your, oh, that kitchen really should have been clean before I started. Oh, I should have done this before I start. Oh, maybe I need to be doing this. Maybe I should be painting people. Maybe I shouldn't be doing abstracts. Maybe I shouldn't be doing abstracts. Oh, maybe I should be doing acrylic pouring. I'm not the right person. I got told that I shouldn't say my real age online since I'm doing more online marketing stuff, because nobody wants to buy from somebody who's as old as I am, which I'm not ancient, thank you, but I am 47 years old. Okay. How does that matter?
I'm so glad that you brought this up, because I wanted to talk to you about this, the ageism in the art world. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. And also, I'm really happy that you're speaking publicly about this. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this more, and like, in what regard, like, because when I read that, it like enrages me. I'm like thinking, in what situation would this actually make sense? So what is your experience actually like? And is this just coming from one person? Are they telling you that from like a good place, but it's kind of a misplaced sort of source? Like, what do you think? How much can you talk about without offending people or whatever? I don't know.
If they get offended, they get offended. At this point, I'm 47 and I don't care.
Yeah.
So no kidding. But so there's a lot of insults that are cloaked in helpful advice, right? I'm sure all of us have gotten it, it's backhanded compliments, that kind of thing. The advice was given from different sources in different ways, but the condensed version was simply, you're reaching out and doing more visual stuff online. One, show up in my videos and things like that. So I'm new on TikTok. I'm just figuring that out. I deleted the app so many times. I added it because my daughter would like just sit there and turn into a zombie looking at it. And then I put it on there and it was like a panic attack in an app. And so I deleted it multiple times. And then I finally got back on there over the past like 2 months, not even, I think. And I'm just, trying to figure things out. The algorithms changed with Instagram. Facebook is locking things down, and that's a whole other discussion. We could talk about the business acumen that's been going on with the nightmare. And anyway, trying to target things and not. But TikTok seems like a decent platform for me to chase after. And given that some of the advices show up on camera, which is hard for me to do. I'm somebody who I had a solo show. My first solo show, and it was at this theater, and it was kind of cool. Didn't sell a thing. So, but there was all these people there. I think the mayor was there from the little town and all this stuff. And I literally at one point realized I was standing behind a potted plant. I didn't do it consciously, but I kind of edged my way back until I was behind a ficus. And because being on camera is hard for me, because we all have our insecurities. And so that's difficult for me. And so the advice is be on camera, but the advice is be a young, pretty thing if you really want to make sales. And, it shouldn't matter if I have 3 heads. If you like my work, that should be enough. But I learned a long time ago that art is weird. The gallery wall. that I had in that first thing. I was with them for a couple of years. The gallery has actually shut down quite a while, I think, ago. But I remember doing art events there, and we were sitting around the table. She had this table in the center of the gallery, and tourists were coming in and going along the edge, and we're just hanging out in the middle and making art or taking a break. And my wall was behind me, and these people were talking about what they assumed my story was, and which was I was dying. And they were like, oh, it's clear that this is okay, it's got to be a woman because of my first name, which is a whole other conversation about whether or not I should have my name because it's clearly feminine. And I signed it just Wilson for a very long time because of that. That's a whole other thing. Anyway, so clearly a woman. She must be very old and repressed. I mean, extremely repressed by the way, the brush strokes this and the color of that. She's very repressed and blah, 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 and all this stuff. The gallery owner and I are sitting here looking at each other, and she's just dying laughing. And then she gets up, and I'm like, oh, please do not do this. And here's the thing. They sounded like they were very interested in the piece and possibly buying one. And she's like, well, the artist is right here. Do you want to meet her? I'm like, I'm going to kill her. I'm like, this gallery owner is not going to make out of here alive. And so they introduced me, and the first thing she said to me, she looked me up and down and went, oh, you're not repressed.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And it was like, thanks, and they were looking for the hard luck stories, like I grew up in a hut in the winter. I, used pine cones to paint, that kind of thing. And they really want that story, and then they want to connect with you. And that was then. They still want to connect with you. They're not necessarily looking for the hard luck story, but a lot of them are, because they're looking for a hook. And galleries like to present a hook. The media outlets that represent artists and artist type interests like a hook. It's hard to find platforms that truly present the art without saying, oh, and here's some backstory for you, because people want to connect. But when you don't have a good story, and I don't, so it's like, I'm some chick in Vermont who paints and has too many pets, I mean, my life has not been easy. There are problems, but I can't talk about those because they involve other people, and it's not necessarily my story to share. And serious, life-threatening issues that put me in a caregiver position where my art has seriously been put on hold. So I'm not where I want to be business-wise. So, but all of that led to nowadays being on a platform where you put yourself out there and people want to connect. And there is this phenomenon of girls standing there and scantily clad with their art, which is never gonna, even if I could, I wouldn't do that, because it's me in a ficus tree. Thank you very much. That's what I do. Here we go. I'm naked. You can't see me. I'm in a ficus tree. Here's my art. I should probably do that. I'm totally scantily clad. Here's my art from a tree. But that shouldn't be how we have to sell our art. But yet sex sells, and it has since the beginning of marketing. So the advice was from the place of, I've got a couple more years before I look like I'm Granny Kyra. So don't tell them your age. And if you tell them your age, I mean, you saw my post. One of the artists commented that she posted her age or whatever, and she was suddenly unfollowed by a bunch of people. So you can see it on my, I don't want to say the name, but
That's horrible.
You can go to my post and you can see it.
That's horrible.
So
I don't understand
ageism, that. I think, I can't say for sure, but I think it's in particular focused on women in the industry. I don't know that it affects men so much.
Yeah.
As far as the age thing goes, but women face ageism on a different level from men in any industry,
Right.
whether you're selling cars or you're a lawyer or whatever. There's
it's interesting too, hearing your perspective on this, because I was actually just working on a job recently, and for whatever reason, my age was brought up. And I remember in this conversation, somebody said to me, because I was talking about, how when I started working in the film industry, I was 18. And now that I'm about to be 28, I am taken a little bit more seriously. But somebody said to me while I was working, they said, give it a few more years and people will actually start valuing you and taking you more seriously.
Whoa.
Like insinuating that because I appear younger, nobody's going to respect me or take me seriously.
Well, that's a really shitty thing to say.
but it's
So it's interesting. It's interesting bouncing both of these scenarios back and forth, because this is the reality. And,
Yep.
I'm happy that we are talking about this with Kyra, because Shane, you asked me, I think it was during our last episode, or maybe like a prior one, like what my experiences have been just in the general workforce as a woman. And I think about situations where, I've even like either received comments or was treated a specific way just for being female. And it's funny, because the more I think about my experiences looking back, it's like how much of this is so normal to me that I don't even, think of it as a situation that's not okay.
Yeah.
And now that I'm actively thinking about these things more and more, to receive a comment recently where somebody said, just wait, give it a few more years and people will start taking you more seriously. These are things you shouldn't have to hear in a work scenario.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's, whether it's this industry or not, I went for a job interview when I was 18 years old for a computer company. And they said, "Oh, you're a young girl. You can't possibly know how to do any programming." I'm like, "Well, but I do."
Yeah.
I didn't get the job. They were looking for a guy.
Yeah.
The only job I've ever been fired from, I got fired on my first day because I was wearing business slacks instead of a skirt. I was fired by women and told that women don't wear pants in a professional office. So I was an executive administrative assistant.
Oh my God.
And I got fired on my first day because I walked in. I had black business slacks on and a silk blouse and hey, yay, 90s. So big belt, and I was fired on the spot.
Wow.
So the female thing plays in art, it plays in film, it plays in policing and in anything. So it's in the art community, in galleries, the gallery representation of men is astronomically out of proportion to the amount of women artists as a population.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other issue. But
yeah, we've done back when I started this podcast, Sonia and I had done some sexism episodes, and we really looked into statistics, and it is staggering. It's disgusting. I mean, it's so unbalanced when you actually look at the numbers, and that's everywhere, like from the top to the bottom, from museums all the way down to your local small co-op gallery. It's like, it's horrible. And me being in the dark art world, I feel like I have my finger on the pulse a little bit. I kind of know what's going on in the world and everything. And this is something that I've recognized a lot, is the unbalanced nature of how many women artists are represented, getting the solo shows, things like that in the dark art world. And also artists of color is another one. I think in general, in the dark art world, there's not a lot of artists of color
in the whole art world.
In the whole art world. Yes, correct.
The minority population, not including women, just the minority population is so underrepresented. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But what it is, these exclusionary practices are all about, in any profession, is about the people who are there being fearful of losing their place. And so, and it's systematic, and it's generational, and it's getting better with every generation. Well, it was until last political cycle, but it's getting better. But it is because it's a situation where the people who are in feel threatened. It's a very difficult situation to combat.
Yeah.
Because the people who are in power are the ones who are too scared to speak rationally about it and make any changes, because they think if they make a change, their change is going to be giving up their share.
Right.
And that's the definition of the problem, no matter what you're talking about. And I've got it easy. The only, exclusionary thing on me is that I'm a woman, and I've got it probably easier than you, and it's absolutely ridiculous, but artists, being what they are in a unique position to change it as well, because, and this actually dials back to the gallery and how you're able to negotiate. They're just people. It's just a business. They one day said, I'm gonna I think I can do it. I think I can put together a gallery. I think that I have the eye. I think I have the know-how. I'm going to do this business. And then they write down an idea of what their plan should be. There's no law that says an art gallery has to charge 50%. There are galleries in New York that charge 90% commission. So this commission is a malleable thing. So is who you include. And you know what? If they don't include you, make your own. That's the coolest thing about art too, is that we're creative enough to go, you don't want us? We're going to find another way. It might be on your driveway, but we're going to show up. But this is a situation where it feels even more, I mean, not that it could feel any less personal, but it's just with our art being so personal to us, it's a rejection on a whole other level. Even though it's like, oh, it's because you're a woman, it's because of this, it's because of that. But it's more because we poured even more of ourselves into it. And it's hurtful, and it's hard to keep coming back when you're denied because of not the art. And so that's, you know, I should look up the podcast and listen to the earlier stuff. That's, you know, it's something that circles.
Yeah. That is so well articulated that I feel like I haven't heard it explained so succinctly. So thank you. Thank you for saying that. And that is true. It's frustrating when it has nothing, when you can't just objectively look at the art and just be like, this is good or bad. I want this person or not. That's it, you know, and it doesn't matter who the person is. It shouldn't matter. And so like you're saying, it's super frustrating when it has nothing to do with your artwork. You know, that there's still people like, this is why I'm like, what, this is so confusing to me. Why is this happening? Because I'm like, I would never deny somebody a chance if I look at their work and I'm like, this is good work. That's it. You know, that's all it should come down to, you know? And of course, then when you go into like marketing brain, then you're like, oh, well, in addition to the work being amazing, they also have a cool story, or they also, you know, they do this other thing, or they put their work out in a certain way, so they are marketable. So like, of course that there's that element, but it shouldn't have anything to do with the color of their skin. It shouldn't have anything to do with gender or gender roles. It shouldn't have anything to do with that. And for some reason, we're still in that mindset, and it's disgusting that that is still a thing. What I like, you brought up the last political cycle, which I hate talking about, but what is interesting about the last political cycle, interesting is maybe not the right adjective here, but the George Floyd situation and everything that was going on during that, and people of every background and artists were looking at like themselves in that situation. And they were like, what I noticed was a lot of people were really finally, actually, including myself, looking at the certain amount of privilege that we have individually, and then also the amount of exposure that artists of color and things. So I'm just mainly speaking about the art world because most of my friends are artists, and the conversations that we were having was like, I just had a 2-hour long conversation with a Mexican friend of mine who's an artist, and they sat there and just like had a entire conversation about how many times they felt like they were not given the chances that this other person had, who was a white artist. And like, and for the first time, I felt like people really sat with that and actually had to listen, regardless of how they actually were confronted with it for the first real time. And so for that reason, like, I was thankful for that period, even though obviously it was a really horrible time in human history, you know. But there was definitely like this moment where I was just like, wow, I was so taken aback by the conversations that were actually being had at that time. So
the problem is that people's memories are short.
Yes,
you know, when
I know
right after my high school-ish years or whatever, Matthew Shepard happened. And people took a long, hard look at that too, you know, and then they felt better later as things move on. And, you know, it's really good that the people who take a look at it, the ones who retain it and make some changes, even better. I mean, I have a stupid amount of privilege and I know it. I have my own problems. I have stuff that I'm not even probably, I know there's stuff I only know what I don't know. And I know that I don't know everything that I don't see about myself that I do wrong and everything. I also know I want to be better and be aware. And the people who decide to stay aware are the ones who you're thankful for, but the cycle will move on. It's just the way it is. You know, you've got the Ukrainian, Russia conflict going on, and that's going to turn to something else. And this other stuff will fade away. And people will talk more about that than they did about that. And it's just the nature of the cycle. So as horrible as these things are when they happen, they're opportunities to grow. I wish more people would grow from them. I'm sitting in a position now where I have less rights than I did when I graduated high school as a woman in this country. And what the hell is that? That's what is going on. And what's going on is that people are, in my opinion, willfully choosing not to listen or to adapt or to change. And the way that affects the art community and the way the art community needs to respond is that we need to support all of us. Because, my whole discussion earlier, my comments that the reason that there's these barriers to people who are different than the standard white male is because that standard white male, not all of them, but a large enough proportion of them are terrified, and that's why they don't want to give up their piece. They're afraid they're going to lose it. But where a community, art has room for everybody. Again, this is unique to art. It's sorry. And when I say art, I'm including writing, music, all of that, all the artistic stuff. It has room for everybody, because when one person is successful, it brings in other eyes, and they go, oh, well, maybe I'll stay a little bit and I'll look around, and that's opportunity for other people. And so every time somebody is successful, another fellow artist, maybe you have some jealousy, envy, whatever. Okay, you're natural, it's human, whatever, it's natural. But as long as you don't let it affect you, it's natural. If you become bitter or angry or passive aggressive towards that person or their success or whatever, it's going to poison your own business. When an artist is successful, it brings in other buyers, other eyes, it opens the minds to other people. And we need to support every single person in here, because even if I'm a white guy sitting here and a Black woman comes in and has this wonderful piece and she does really, really well, I shouldn't be threatened by that at all. I should be like, yay, go you, because not only is it healthy for you to be that way, it is also beneficial to you because it is making the art community larger and the reach broader. And that broad reach helps you too, even if you're at the top of the heap. So this is the one community where the more people you can get involved, the better it is for you, even if you got some that are terrified and hanging onto their little dollars and paintbrushes up at top going, nobody can be here, I'm the best. That's the one you don't want to deal with. But
right,
there is literally no drawback to bringing everybody in. It makes everybody better. So
I agree with that. I think that like growing that entire community and everything and including everyone, it is like, I feel like the people I surround myself with all understand that, and like you're saying, like staying in that place and not harboring like ill feelings. Like, of course, like you're saying, it is a natural thing. It is human to be like, I wish I would have thought of that idea, or I wish I would have, oh, damn it. I had this idea 10 years ago and I didn't do it. And then they did it. And they beat me to the punch. There it is. It's like you have those thoughts, but I'm like, well, you know what? Good for them. They freaking did it, And so, so as long as you don't stay there, I like what you said about like that poisons your business. And that's so true. And I've seen that kind of like bitterness happen. And there's times I felt that as well,
I mean, I see that happening a lot too across the board in the different types of art. And I think something to take away from this too is to just recognize that like somebody else's success is not a loss for you. It has no it has nothing to do with you. And that kind of supports, what both of you are saying about how the community should keep that in mind when working with people, and trying to remember that, like, if there's something you think you're protecting when it comes to your own work or the way that you practice, it has absolutely nothing to do with the way somebody else is operating.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a very enlightening conversation. Before you go, I would love for you to talk about Strange Dreams a little bit, if you could, because you guys have been around for a while now, and I love how you operate. And for people who don't know about Strange Dreams Art Collective, for people to get an idea of how you guys do your thing, and how you came to be.
So Strange Dreams happened. I didn't actually know about art collectives until I was approached by the Rabbit Hole Collective way back. And I said, "Oh, what's the collective?" And they said, do you want to do this and sell art? And I thought that's a great way for me to sell some art on Facebook while my kids were younger, and it gave me a goal and stuff too, which kept me moving because I was in kid nightmare. And that was good, but Martin Woodhead and I saw things a little differently from the way the collective was run. We saw that it could be a little bit, well, for one thing, he does a much different style of work than like Rabbit Hole Collective has a lot of fairies and mermaids and stuff like that, and Martin's art is skulls, and it's a little bit
What
of a contrast.
No, I'm just joking.
So his work, he didn't feel like it felt in as well as some other things, and I felt like my work was okay, but it also felt repetitive, and I was growing as an artist. One of the most important things we can do is be able to pivot and adapt, and that on all fronts, with what you're working on, your subject matter, how you market yourself, where you sell, everything. You have to be ready to switch. And Martin and I chatted, and we just realized that we were sort of growing in a different direction, and so we broke off and said, okay, well, if we put together collective, it wouldn't compete directly against them because it's completely different subject matter. So we put it together, and we wanted to find artists that were sort of working towards gallery type shows and everything, which is different than what the Rabbit Hole Collective was doing. And so we wanted to be more of a professional organization group. That is, it's like a gallery. You apply to get in, and this is important to remember too. When you apply to a gallery, if the gallery owner is curating the artist, you might not fit with their vision. It doesn't mean you're not a good artist. It just means that it's not a cohesive blend for the gallery owner. And so as we're the curators of the collective, it's the same sort of thing. And so people will have open calls. There's going to be an open call probably in a month for Strange Dreams. So
okay.
Putting that out there. And we want to make sure that we take people who the feel kind of fits somehow, but it doesn't mimic anybody else there too. We don't want anybody kind of crossing hairs there. So we're a group collective that does our own online shows. We have a website. We sell individually through the website. None of the proceeds run through Strange Dreams itself. It's its own entity, but all business transactions are through the artists themselves. There is no commission. So there is a very small membership fee that we've just started doing because the website hosting got really expensive, but that's it. And marketing, we've also being able to pivot, Facebook changing the algorithms and everything else, and we're pay to play. So we have to pay for the ads and the marketing reach and everything. So that's Strange Dreams, and the artists are fantastic. And
yeah,
the
who are
community.
some of the artists? Obviously, you probably can't name them all off the top of your head, but just to name a few of the names in there.
Let's see. We got, oh boy.
Oh, geez.
See, it's later in the day. You catch me at 6 a.m. and I got it. Terry Woodward, Lori McClave, Adam Sargent, Corey Durfus, Monica, I can never pronounce her last name. Petit Biard or whatever. She's gonna kill me.
Yeah. So how many, how many artists right now do you have as members of the group approximately?
We're at 18 right now. We keep it, we don't ever want to go over 24. 24 is our max. And we also kind of keep an eye out too. If we see somebody that is a good fit for us, we might reach out to them. But most of the additions come through the open calls.
And
So, and we get amazing submissions.
yeah, like the themes and stuff, it's very like, I mean, it's very like kind of fantasy-esque oriented. Like what do you consider yourselves like genre wise? Like if there's people who are listening
Just
who
surreal.
surreal. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's Strange Dreams. It used to be Strange Dreams Surreal Art Collective, but we figured the surreal was kind of assumed when you looked at our
Right.
work. So yeah, it's surreal, and the themes are voted on by the members. They suggest, we narrow it down, everybody votes, so it's a collective thing. It's not like a dictatorship. And the theme is however you choose to interpret it. So, you know, if we have I have to give an old one. Say we just did cycles or something, nature cycles or something, and you can interpret that any way you want. And, you know, there's a million different ways to do it. And your style, your vision with a very vague theme is what the whole purpose is, because the collective isn't so that everybody will be like each other. The collective is so you can say, here is my translation of that idea. Because when you're selling art, and this is what I've said to you before, if you paint an apple, you're not selling a painting of an apple. You're selling an apple painting that is by you. And the part of you is the most important part of the piece. And that is the most important part of each individual artist that's part of the collective. It's their vision, their voice that we're supporting. So that's Strange.
That's great.
that.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to have you list where people can find you online. How do people find you and the Strange Dreams Art Collective?
So the Strange Dreams Art Collective is strangedreamsart.com. We're also Strange Dreams Art on Facebook. I'm Kyra Wilson, Kyra Wilson.net, or KWilsonstudio.com. Either one of those will go to my site. I'm on Facebook, Kyra Wilson Art. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on there now.
Yeah.
I'm learning. So I'm trying to pivot. You have to adapt and you have to be able to pivot. And so I'm doing that now. And I'm also on Patreon, but it's kind of hidden right now because I've taken down the page. I'm revamping everything. One of the things I've done for a really long time is I've mentored artists quietly. And for whatever purpose that they want to be mentored for. I've mentored them for, probably almost 10, 15 years now. I'm going to offer a mentorship program and groups and stuff. And I'm going to start doing videos, technique, and business advice in particular. I'm going to have a lot of business stuff to offer, which we didn't touch too much on, but that's okay because that's so boring. But
we don't find it boring, actually. Yeah. I mean, we could have you back on to talk specifically about those things, honestly.
I know, I feel like we could talk to you for like 10 hours about so many different things.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could talk about social media, we could talk about business things, but this has been a great conversation, Kyra. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
Do you have any upcoming shows, any deadlines coming up for some things that you can talk about?
I have a small piece that's going to be in the Nocturnum 5/7 show. And then honestly, I've pulled back. I'm going to put out, I don't have gallery representation for myself. And the reason is because the rise of the internet made galleries obsolete for a while, and that's evolved, and that's not true anymore. Now the best option for any artist out there is sort of a hybrid, unless they're wildly successful on their own, and then they don't need to hybrid anything. But I'm at my particular business situation, I'm going to look for gallery representation specific, not just like a show. I want to have a gallery representation for myself. I am working on 4 different new series. And so that's really my focus this year. So I've got big paintings I'm working on, and I've got some random stuff too. And I do little, I call them warm-up paintings. So I do like the time-lapse paintings that maybe you've seen, like a bird or whatever. Like this was one that was on like a time-lapse, you know, and it's not necessarily the only thing I do, but this was just a warm-up painting. And then I do the bigger series stuff. And the series I'm going to hold back and then release, but that's when I'll start reaching out to galleries for representation again and figuring out that relationship that we talked about earlier.
Cool.
So that's where I'm at.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And yeah, I mean, we could definitely talk to you about so many more of those things.
I just wanted to cap this off with thank you. And this conversation's been so refreshing. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here, and I think that there's going to be a lot of stuff here that will resonate with the audience. And yeah, it's been a great conversation. Hopefully we can have you on again, because we didn't even get to talk about your beautiful studio space too.
Oh my gosh, I know, right?
So like, there's so many things that
painting
we could just talk about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Thanks for coming on. I admire you a lot as a person, and I admire your everything between like the way you carry yourself as a professional and as a person, and listening to you has just been very refreshing.
Thank you. That's actually one of the nicest things that's ever been said to me. Thank you.
Aw, look at that. If y'all enjoyed this episode of the podcast, you can stream and download previous episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or our website, drawingfromexperience.com. Please go rate and review us on iTunes or Spotify. You can also find us on Facebook at the Drawing From Experience Creative Community. And you can find us on Instagram at instagram.com/DFE podcast. Stefania, where do we find you?
You can find me on Instagram as Stefania Medeiros _, and you can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Stefania Medeiros, and on Facebook as just Stefania Medeiros.
And you can find my personal work at ShaneIzykowski.com or my Patreon, patreon.com/Shane Izykowski. You can also find Drawing From Experience on Patreon as well. At patreon.com/drawingfromexperience. And then you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Shane Izykowski Artist. Kyra, thank you so much again for joining us. We will chat again for sure. And good luck with all the things.
Yeah, best of luck with the rest of your year.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys too.
Bye-bye. The Drawing From Experience podcast is co-produced by me, Shane Izykowski, and Stefania Medeiros, with editing by me and support coming from our Patreon at patreon.com/drawingfromexperience. And our sponsors. If you'd like to be a sponsor, you can contact us at dfepodcast@gmail.com.